I'm sorry, Ma. It was an accident.
It's fine, really, she didn't.
How dare you touch him with those filthy hands?
Ma, I didn't mean. You people don't know your place. Pick that up. Don't let me see your face again.
You went too far.
She's nothing. Don't defend her.
After everything she did to me, why should I even care? But what if it's true? Hello?
Sir, please don't hang up. I think someone is planning to kill her.
What are you talking about?
I heard them. They've already been paid.
This weekend on completed building.
Do you know who sent them?
Is someone very close to her?
Her name was Goodness Jonathan, and that name was the only thing she had left that nobody could take from her. She had come to Lagos with nothing, and the address of a woman who promised her a job after asking her for a, quote, agent fee. The woman disappeared the second week. The money she had saved for 3 years, gone. She had cried that night on a bench outside a petrol station, watching buses speed past, wondering if anyone in any of those buses had ever felt as invisible as she did. A week later, she found a cleaning job at Meridian Prestige Limited, one of Lagos's fastest-growing import companies, owned by the Adeyemi family. The pay was small, the hours were long, but it was something, and something she had learned was better than nothing. She woke up every morning at 4:30. She took 2 buses to get to the office. She mopped floors that were already clean. She scrubbed bathrooms that executives barely thanked her for. And she did it all quietly, with dignity, without complaint. Her colleagues in the cleaning unit, 2 older women named Mama Titi and Auntie Franca, would often look at her with soft eyes. "That girl is special," Mama Titi would whisper. Despite the fact that she's suffering, she doesn't carry it on her face. And it was true. Even when her shoes leaked in the rain, Goodness came to work. Even when she hadn't eaten since the morning before, Goodness came to work. Even when she was sick, she would cough quietly into her arm and keep moving her mop. She did not beg, she did not complain. She was simply there, invisible, faithful, uncelebrated. She sent money home every month, little as it was, to her younger brother in Ondo State, who was in secondary school. She had promised her mother before she died, "I will make sure he finishes school." That promise was her reason to keep going, beyond anything. Caribel Williams was beautiful in the way that only money and confidence together can create. She had studied business administration in London. She had interned at firms in Dubai. She had come back to Lagos glowing, wearing heels that cost more than Goodness earned in 4 months. When her father, Chief Donald Williams, placed the company in her hands, he sat her down in his study and spoke to her gently. "Caribel, I built this company from nothing, from sweat, from God's grace and the kindness of people who trusted me. Whatever you do, treat every person in that building with respect, from the chairman to the person who mops the floor." Caribel had smiled sweetly, kissed her father's cheek. "Yes, Daddy, of course." But power entered her slowly, like a poison with no taste. The first month, she was firm but fair. The second month, she stopped greeting the security men. In the third month, she stopped saying please. By the 6th month, she had become someone her father would not recognize. Staff whispered when she walked past, not out of admiration, out of fear. And feeding that fear, encouraging it, celebrating it, was her best friend, Thinkabel. Thinkabel had known Caribel since university. She was clever the way a snake is clever, always watching, always calculating, always close to warmth, but never the source of it. She worked at Caribel's company as head of client relations, a position Caribel had given her. She wore the finest clothes. She attended every event on Caribel's arm. She laughed at every joke and agreed with every opinion. And she had learned very early that the fastest way to keep Caribel's favor was to make her feel superior. "They are jealous of you," Thinkabel would say. "That's why they look at you like that. Don't let them be too comfortable. Familiarity breeds contempt. You're the CEO. Act like it." And Caribel listened to every word. It started with small things. Goodness would be mopping a corridor, and Caribel would walk past with a group of clients, and without breaking her stride, she would say, loudly to no one in particular, "These cleaners are so slow. You have to watch them, otherwise they do nothing." Goodness would keep her eyes down and keep mopping. Then it escalated. One afternoon, Caribel was reviewing documents at her desk and spilled a glass of water, entirely by her own doing. She pressed her intercom. "Send the cleaner, now!" Goodness arrived in 3 minutes. She apologized for the delay and bent down to clean the water. Caribel stood over her, arms folded. "You took 5 minutes to come here. What exactly are you doing in this building?" "I'm sorry, ma. I was finishing the..." "I didn't ask you where you were. I'm asking what your job is." "To clean, ma." "Then clean, and do it faster, or I will find someone who will." Goodness nodded, finished cleaning, walked out. In the corridor, she pressed her back against the wall, breathed slowly, told herself what she always told herself. "It's okay. You need this job. Don't cry. Don't cry." She didn't cry, not there. But that night, in the single room she shared with 2 other women in Mushin, she turned to face the wall, and she allowed herself exactly 10 minutes to cry. Then she stopped, wiped her face, and slept because she had 2 buses to catch in the morning. There is a particular kind of cruelty that is quiet enough to be called management. Caribel mastered it. She would deliberately leave her lunch on the edge of her desk and watch it fall. Then she called Goodness to clean it up while she sat and laughed with Tinkerbell about something else entirely, as if the person on her knees on the floor were furniture. She would pour water near the elevator, right where executives walked, and then emerge from the lift and say in front of everyone, "Goodness, there's water here. Why is there water on my floor? Is this how you work?" Goodness would come, mop it, say nothing. But the executives had seen, and some of them looked away, ashamed. One day, a day Goodness would never forget, Caribel's fiancé, Damien, came to visit the office. He was tall, soft-spoken, and had the kind of calm presence that made a room feel gentler. He was speaking on his phone when he rounded a corner and nearly walked into Goodness, who was carrying a pile of files she had been asked to move from one floor to another. The files were scattered everywhere. Goodness dropped to her knees instantly. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry. I didn't..." Damien crouched down beside her, began picking up the files. "It's fine. It was my fault too. I wasn't looking. Here." Then the glass doors burst open. Caribel. She had been watching from her office, through the glass wall. She had seen everything. She crossed the floor in 4 long strides, and before Damien could stand up, before Goodness could move, slap! The sound cut through the office like a blade. Every head turned. Every keyboard stopped. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Goodness's cheek burned. Her eyes filled immediately, not from pain, but from shock, from humiliation, from the audience of 50 people who had just watched another human being hit her like she was nothing. "How dare you?" Caribel's voice was shaking, not with remorse, but with fury. "How dare you touch him with your dirty hands? Who gave you permission to be near him? Do you know who he is?" Goodness said nothing. She could not speak. She pressed her lips together and stared at the floor because if she looked up, she would break completely. "Answer me, or are you deaf as well as useless?" Damien stepped forward. His voice was very quiet. "Caribel, stop." "She knocked my files, and I was already handling it. You didn't need to..." He paused, looked at Goodness. "Are you okay?" Goodness nodded, even though she wasn't. Tinkerbell appeared from nowhere, as she always did. She placed a hand on Caribel's shoulder. "Babe, it is okay. She is just a cleaner. Do not stress yourself with her." Just a cleaner. Those 3 words landed on Goodness differently than the slap had. The slap had been painful. Those words were erasure. Caribel straightened her jacket, shot Goodness one last look of contempt, and walked back to her office. Tinkerbell followed, already whispering something in her ear that made Caribel almost smile. The office returned to its noise slowly. Damien looked at Goodness. He reached into his jacket. "Take my card if you ever need." "Thank you, sir." She took it without looking at him. She was afraid that if anyone showed her kindness right now, she would collapse. She gathered the files, all of them, every last page. She walked to the stairwell. She sat down on the cold concrete step, and she cried, silently, shoulders shaking, hand over her mouth so no one would hear. She cried for herself. She cried for her mother who had died, never seeing her daughter succeed. She cried for her brother who was waiting for the school fees she had not yet been able to send. She cried for the woman she had been told she was, poor, useless, nothing, and for how long she had been fighting to believe otherwise. Then she wiped her face, and she went back to work, because she had no choice. Not yet.
3 weeks after the slap, something happened that Goodness had not expected. Word had traveled. Some of the junior staff had witnessed what Caribel did, and they had talked, and it had reached HR. And HR, afraid of liability, had gently suggested to Caribel that perhaps the incident should be managed. Caribel's response was to call Goodness into her office. Goodness stood in front of that massive glass desk with her hands clasped. "I have been told," Caribel said without looking up from her phone, "that what happened last week upset you." Goodness said nothing. "I want you to know that I do not apologize for having standards, but HR says I should speak to you, so consider this the conversation." She finally looked up, studied Goodness the way someone studies a mark on a wall that they are deciding whether to paint over. "If you're going to continue working here, I need you to be more careful around my guests. Can you do that?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Can you do that? Goodness looked at this woman for a long moment. This woman who had everything: wealth, beauty, a loving father, a patient fiancé, a future so bright it was almost blinding, and had still chosen to make another person's small life smaller. And something inside Goodness shifted. It was quiet. There was no drama to it. It was simply a door closing. "Yes, ma." She said it, nodded, and walked out. That evening, she told Mama Titi, "I'm leaving." Mama Titi looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I know, I've been waiting for you to say it. I need the job, but you need your dignity more." Goodness looked at the older woman, eyes full. "What if I can't find another one?" "You found this one, you'll find another." Mama Titi squeezed her hand. "Some places are not worth your faithfulness, my daughter. Leave before it takes something from you that you cannot get back." The next morning, Goodness wrote a short resignation letter. 1 page. No bitterness, no accusations. Just, "I am resigning my position effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunity." She folded it neatly, placed it on the HR desk. She collected her small locker items: a lip balm, a small Bible, and a photo of her mother. She said goodbye to Mama Titi and Auntie Franca. They held her for a long time. She did not go past Caribel's office. She did not look up at the glass wall. She just walked toward the exit. And as the revolving door turned and the Lagos heat hit her face, she exhaled. For the first time in 11 months, she exhaled completely. The weeks that followed were the hardest of her life. She went from office to office with her CV printed on paper she had borrowed money to get. Security men turned her away at reception desks. HR officers told her they would keep her details on file. I never called. One woman at a cleaning company laughed at her certificate, a diploma in hospitality management she had studied for at night while working, and told her she was overqualified for cleaning and underqualified for anything else. She started washing clothes in people's homes. She found a compound in Surulere where several young men lived.
They paid her weekly. They left bags of laundry outside, and she would come in the mornings, wash, hang, and collect. She asked no questions. She needed no drama. She just walked. One morning, as she wrung out a shirt by the backyard tap, she heard the men inside talking, low voices, serious. The window above her was slightly open. She wasn't trying to listen, but the words floated down to her. This weekend, on uncompleted building on an upper road. The client has already paid half. The target won't see it coming. The woman never travels with a schedule. Thinkable already confirmed the route. Goodness's hands were still in the water. Thinkable. She heard the name clearly. She would never forget that name. Not after what she had whispered into Caribel's ear. Not after those 3 words. Just a cleaner. She didn't move, barely breathing. Listened. And piece by piece, the picture assembled itself. The target was Caribel. The person who arranged it was Thinkable. And it was happening in 5 days. She sat outside on an overturned bucket after the men went quiet. The wet clothes dripped beside her. The sun was already hot on her neck. And she thought. She thought about the slap, about the words, about the 50 people who had watched and said nothing, about Caribel's face as she had walked back into her glass office, unbothered, untouched, lapped in her own certainty. She thought, why should I help her? And she had no answer. Not a logical one. But then she thought about something her mother used to say. Goodness, your name is not just a name, it is an instruction. She closed her eyes. She reached into her apron pocket and she found the card. The one she had carried for weeks without knowing why. The one that belonged to the man who had crouched down beside her on the floor and picked up the scattered files. Damien. She called him. And when he told her who she was, the cleaner from the office, he did not hesitate, did not dismiss her. He said, tell me everything. And she did. The police came that Saturday with no sirens. They came quietly, the way Goodness had always moved through her days, unseen, underestimated, effective. Caribel had been kidnapped. The route had been compromised from the inside, just as planned. They had held her in the uncompleted building on Apapa Road, her hands bound, her heels broken, mascara running down her face. She had never been this afraid, not even close. In all her power, all her meetings, all her heels and glass offices and chauffeured cars, she had never once imagined she could be this helpless. When the torches flooded the building and the shouting began and the men scattered, she could not stop shaking. Even after she was safe, even after a blanket was placed around her shoulders, she could not stop shaking. Thinkable was arrested the following morning. It came out slowly, then all at once. The business deal she had sabotaged, the commissions she had been quietly siphoning, the jealousy that had been building for years beneath smiles and brunches and shopping trips, and Damien. She had wanted Damien, had watched the way he looked at Caribel with patient devotion, and had decided at some point she could not even name that she deserved that more. When Caribel sat in the police station and heard it all, she didn't cry about the kidnapping. She cried about Thinkable. Because you can be afraid of strangers, but betrayal only works when it comes from someone you trusted completely. It was Damien who finally told her the full truth, who had warned him, who had called, who had remembered his number and used it. Caribel was quiet for a very long time. Then she said slowly, Goodness. Not a question, just the name, sitting in her mouth differently than it ever had before. She found her 3 days later. Goodness was in a compound in Surulere, hanging clothes on a line when she heard footsteps. She turned. Caribel stood at the entrance of the compound. She was wearing no makeup. Her hair was in a loose bun. She had on flat shoes. She looked smaller than Goodness remembered, and not in a good way, in the way that happens when the armor finally comes off and what's underneath is just a person, frightened and ashamed and not sure what to do with either feeling. Goodness did not move. Caribel walked toward her slowly, stopped a few feet away. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I'm sorry." The words were barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for every time I spoke to you like you weren't a person. I'm sorry for the slap. I'm sorry for..." She stopped, swallowed. "There are too many things to list, but I am sorry for all of them." Goodness looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I know." "Will you come back? Not to clean, just as..." Caribel's voice cracked. "I don't have many real people around me. I'm realizing that now. I don't want a servant. I want someone honest. Will you give me a chance to do this differently?" Behind Caribel, Damien had followed at a respectful distance. He stood at the entrance of the compound, watching. He had told Caribel that morning that he couldn't continue the engagement, not yet, that he needed to see real change before he could trust what they were building together. She had not argued. She had just nodded and said, "Then let me start." Now, in the compound, with wet clothes dripping on the line between them, Goodness looked at this woman who had once made her feel like nothing. And she thought about her mother's voice, about what the name meant. She said, "Give me a week. Let me think about it." Caribel blinked. She had not expected anything so balanced, so calm. She nodded. "Okay." She turned and walked back toward the entrance. Then Goodness's voice followed her. "Caribel." She turned. "I'm glad you are alive." Something in Caribel's face broke completely. She pressed her hand over her mouth and walked quickly away. Damien met her on the street. She was already crying. He did not hold her, but he stood beside her, which, for now, was enough. They say that some people come into your life to teach you something. Caribel would say that Goodness came to break her and then save her. And she wouldn't be wrong about either. Goodness went back, not to clean, but to manage a small CSR initiative Caribel created. A fund that supported young women from low-income backgrounds who wanted to study. It was a quiet program. It didn't make the papers, but it mattered to the 12 girls who got scholarships in the first year. Her brother finished secondary school, and with the support of the program, he enrolled in university. Damien watched Caribel for 6 months, then 7, then 8. In the 9th month, he showed up at her door. "I want to try again, if you do." "I do." Tinkerbell went to trial, and the friendship that had been built on flattery and poisonous whispers was finally, officially over. And Goodness? She still woke up early, she still worked hard, she still sent money home. But now, when she walked into a building, she walked in through the front door, and no one told her to move. Thanks for listening and watching. Subscribe to this channel for more stories like this, and let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Have a great day.